I think the federal government response has been superb. I really do. From the moment that President Trump blocked travel from China, from his actions to initiate the Defense Production Act and put into play manufacturing of personal protective equipment to make sure that our frontline workers had the protective gear that they needed to battle this virus, getting our therapeutic, biologic, and pharmaceutical industries in high gear, focused on developing testing and a vaccine. Keep in mind, we didn't know anything about this virus when we started. We didn't know how to test for it. We didn't know a vaccine for it. We were starting from scratch. It's almost like fighting a guerrilla war when you don't know who your enemy is and you don't know anything about your enemy and you're starting off from scratch. But then the president worked very closely with the House, and we put together 4 packages of corona relief packages, things to help families with stimulus checks, $1,200 for individuals, $2,400 for a family making less than $150,000 a year or less, and $500 for each child, paycheck protection program loans, forgivable loans to keep small businesses alive. And remember, about 86% of the small business loans that were executed in my district were for less than $150,000. And there's still a lot of that money out there, Stan, that has not come down from the federal government yet because the timeline expired. I really wish we could get Speaker Pelosi to come back to the table and do even more, because there's more that could be done. All total, though, there's still a lot of money at the federal level that has yet to make it down to the people that it was appropriated for. And that's because all 50 states have a different set of processes and rules and regulations that they have to go through to distribute that money. Everything from unemployment, and oh, by the way, let's not forget the unemployment extension at the federal level, the $600 per week. I think that turned out to be a little bit problematic. We found that out the hard way, because then it was hard to get some people to come back to work. I've heard those complaints from employers all up and down my district that when you're paying someone more to stay at home on unemployment than I can pay them on the job, they'd be foolish not to stay on unemployment as long as they can. So we've got some tweaking to this to do, but I think given the uncertainty of this virus, the lies and the withholding of information from China and the World Health Organization, how late we were finding out just how devastating it was going to be, I think the federal government has done a good job. Excellent question. I came in office in 2011, elected in 2010. Obamacare was put in place in 2010. What were we told at that time? We were given a price tag. It turned out to be twice as much as what the federal government, what the Obama administration told us it was going to be. They said patients could keep their doctors. They said it was going to lower their health insurance premiums. They said it was going to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. None of those things were true, Stan. And we have been fighting ever since January of 2011 to find common ground with our Democrat colleagues to try and repeal and replace this abomination called Obamacare, so that we could put healthcare back in the hands of doctors and their patients. I get really frustrated when I hear some say that Republicans want to repeal and replace, but they never say what we're going to replace it with. That is absolutely uncategorically untrue. It goes back to something that Vice President Pence said the other night in the vice presidential debate. A person can have their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own facts. And the facts are, ever since January of 2011, Republicans have had a plan. We want to make healthcare more competitive, make it portable from state to state and job to job so that healthcare insurance companies have to compete for the business. Let's get rid of that bureaucratic 15-member panel in Washington, D.C. that was determining what kind of healthcare people could have. And let's let patients and doctors make the decisions about their healthcare. Let's protect those with pre-existing conditions. That has always been a hallmark of the Republican plan. And let's keep people that are 26 years old and younger, 26 years old and younger, those that are struggling to make it through college because of unemployment or college debt or just can't find a job. They couldn't in the Obama administration. So we were all for letting them stay on their parents' health insurance policy. So I get a little bit frustrated when I hear people say that Republicans have never articulated their plan. It's because nobody wants to hear the plan because it's not singing the praises of Obamacare. Obamacare has failed the American people, and that's why we're working so hard to try and fix it. I am pro-life, 100% all the way. I subscribe to the Reagan doctrine. Ronald Reagan is one of our greatest presidents, a president that lived by faith. And I like what Ronald Reagan said. Except in the case of the life of the mother, rape or incest, I believe in the sanctity of human life. And I believe that life starts at conception. And you know something, we're in the middle of a crisis here, Stan, where we're talking about racial justice. My gosh, Stan, when you look at the numbers of abortions that have occurred in our country since it became legal, Stan, do you know what the largest population is that has had those abortions? It's our minority populations. It's our minorities. And that is shameful. It is absolutely shameful. We've got people in this country that go to China and other Asian countries and other countries across the world to adopt children, people who can't have children. And yet we've got all of those children that could have been born right here and go to families that would love them and care for them. Bottom line, I am strongly pro-life, and I will never shy away from that position. I'm a father of 4 and a grandfather of 6, and I lost a grandson in a horrific fire when he was 4 years old. And I know the grief of losing a child. And children are special. You might know, Stan, about my book called Raising Fathers, which actually talks about the pro-life issue, about the staggering number of children that are being raised across this country in fatherless homes. And a lot of the things that you see that are ailing our country right now, Stan, stems from the disillusion, the dissolving of the traditional American family and the number of children that are being raised in fatherless homes. And boy, I sure want, I'm trying to do everything I can to start a national conversation about that. Well, the Second Amendment says there should be no gun control. The Second Amendment, this sounds humorous, but I actually mean it. There is no more unambiguous statement in the Constitution of the United States than the Second Amendment, that the right of the American people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, anybody on this call that hears this recording that's a business person, they know what the word shall means. The word shall in the contractual context of legal jargon means it's unambiguous. It means it is absolute. And so the federal government has no say-so in the rights of the American people to keep and bear arms. And I stand by that. I believe that, whether it's for recreation, for self-protection, to keep a big encroaching government from stepping on us, like what our founding fathers were concerned about. I believe in the Second Amendment, and I'm going to continue to fight hard to make sure it stays like it is. Stan, that is one of my biggest concerns. It was one of my biggest concerns when I first came into office in January of 2011. This is unsustainable. We're on a fiscal path that's going to get us into big trouble if we don't figure out how to turn it around. But the problem is not that the American people are taxed too little. The problem is that Washington spends too much. The federal government has gotten too big. We spend too much. You know, first of all, let me tell you that the part of the budget that we argue about every year. You know, you hear this: are the Republicans going to shut down the federal government? Are the Democrats going to shut down the federal government? The reality is that part of the budget, the spending that we argue about every year in the annual spending process, is only 1/3 of what the federal government spends. If you look at it as a pie, it's only about a 1/3 slice out of that pie. 2/3 of what the federal government spends, Stan, is built into what's called mandatory spending. It's spending that is embedded in permanent law, and you cannot stop that spending. It's like an allotment from your paycheck that you cannot stop. It's going to go to the recipient that you designated it to, no matter what you do. And so what we have to do is find common ground. That's why I'm glad to be a part of the Problem Solvers Caucus. You know, the 25 Republicans, the 25 Democrats that leave our party ideology at the door, and we try to solve problems that we find common ground on. The president was asking for $5 billion in the spend plan for border security, and Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats in the Senate would not go along with that. So he called a meeting at the White House of the Problem Solvers Caucus. So a bunch of Democrats and a bunch of Republicans went to the White House to meet with the president, sitting in the president's Oval Office conference room. And he walks in and he says, folks, what am I supposed to do? He said, we've got human traffickers bringing kids across that border in droves, kids that aren't even theirs, sexual offenders, you name it. We've got fentanyl and heroin flooding across our southern border. We've got terrorists, MS-13, you name it. We've got caravans paying people to help organize them to bring them to our southern border to try and get across. What am I supposed to do? My job, my sworn oath, is to protect the safety and security of the American people. I need to secure our southern border. You tell me what I'm supposed to do. But here's what I want to use the money for. And he had Vice President Pence go through a 10-element plan for what that $5 billion would be used for. Stan, after he finished, the Democrats around the table said, you know something, Mr. President, there's virtually nothing here that you said that doesn't make sense. Why haven't we seen this before? And he kind of laughed and chuckled and he said, well, it's because you watch too much CNN and MSNBC and nobody's telling you this. Go back and ask your leadership. Go back and ask Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer if they know about this. And they said, well, you know, if you could meet us in the middle, we could give you most of these 10 elements that you're looking for. I think we can solve this problem. He said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. He said, I'm going to open the government up for 2 more weeks. I'm going to pause the fight, and I'm going to open the government up for 2 weeks. You've got 2 weeks to go back to your leadership and convince them that you want to support border security and these things that I've got in place. And oh, by the way, it wasn't to build the Great Wall of China from the Gulf Coast to the Pacific Ocean. It wasn't that at all. And when those colleagues realized that, they had a different attitude. And if you recall, within that 2-week period, we came to a spending agreement and life went on. There are those that say that this president doesn't want to cooperate, doesn't want to compromise, doesn't want to deal with Democrats. Nothing could be further from the truth because I've seen him do it. We can solve this budget crisis. I'm the vice ranking member on the budget committee right now. The current ranking member on the budget committee, Steve Womack, he and I are friends. We came in together in 2010 when we were elected. He has made it known he's going home to the Appropriations Committee. And so he's not going to be serving on the Budget Committee next term. I plan to make my case to leadership and to our steering committee. I would very much like to be the top Republican on the House Budget Committee, because I've got some ideas on how we can solve this problem. Let me tell you one other thing, why it is so critical that we have somebody there that knows what they're doing. We've been saying for years that Medicare and Social Security are going to go bankrupt soon. It started out in 2011. Medicare was going to go bankrupt around 2036. It became so diminished that it moved to 2026. In the latest report by the Medicare trustees, because of COVID-19, tamping down on the revenue that goes into Medicare because of the employee taxes and the amount of payouts of Medicare for COVID-related illnesses. Medicare is now going to go insolvent. Medicare Part A, Stan, in late 2022, early 2023. That means the next president, regardless of who wins this next election, is going to have a terrible, terrible problem with dealing with that. And they're going to have leaders in both parties at the table that can come to common ground on solutions that are going to solve this problem. So this national debt is unsustainable. Washington's got to stop spending money we don't have.